Is fan fiction worthwhile? So I'm going to be a little biased in my answer that yes, fan fiction is absolutely worthwhile. I started it when I was pretty young, when I was writing a fan fiction for an anime that I loved as a little girl. Now, L.J. Smith absolutely got me into writing, but the first story that I wrote was the anime fan fiction. It was on paper and it was absolutely atrocious. It was something like he went there and she got kidnapped and terrible things happened and then he saved her and in the end they kissed. Thank you, good night. uh, so that was pretty much how I got my start. Unless you count that second grade story I wrote about my guinea pigs and moving to a different house, but I'm not really sure that counts. So the first thing that makes fan fiction worthwhile is just the fact that it's a community. It brings people together to explore their favorite shows or books or movies or whatever in a way that they can't just by talking about it. It allows them to get creative with it. They can take their characters and put them in different situations they'd never be on in the show. They can put them in alternate universes. They can put them in alternate clothing. You're a preppy little girl, suddenly a goth, and she's having a terrible, horrible, devastating time. Big surprise, a lot of teenagers write this. It's definitely a way to explore something you love with a bunch of other people in a manner that's so creative, and it comes up with so many different ideas, and they range from just light, fluffy, sappy little stories, it's like eating a bunch of cotton candy, to really dark, depressing, sometimes really grisly type of stories. But it's really interesting to see what people come up with. I know that once I wrote a fan fiction, I really don't want to name it because it was actually kind of big at the time, but it took this really lighthearted thing I was into and basically turned it into a how did these teenagers become serial killers? And character-wise, it was absolutely atrocious. Like, I'm not gonna lie, you can't even read that and be like, oh, I totally recognize them from that thing. No, not at all. It was pretty bad as far as that went. But it definitely allowed me to explore something a little bit darker because at that age I was definitely reading a lot of true crime stuff on crimelibrary.org. So I got to get some of that out in a way that's arguably pretty healthy. Like, instead of going out and seeing how it looks when a mouse dies, which, spoiler, I still don't think I could stomach that, I'd probably cry, I got to do that through characters. And it was through fan fiction. And yes, terrible, horrible characterization fan fiction, but it was still something that kept me writing and it kept me going. And that's the second part of what makes the fan fiction community so interesting, is that it actually can produce really good writers. I have read some fantastic fan fiction in my time, from Kingdom Hearts to Sailor Moon, even to crossovers to Vampire Diaries. I've read so much good stuff in the fan fiction community. It's really just amazing what talented people can be passionate about something like this. And it's really invigorating to read these stories and to see your favorite characters go through something that you don't think they ever would have gone through. It's just so, so interesting to watch all of that play out before your own eyes, to have your imagination run wild with it, while the author themselves had their imagination run wild with it. It's really fun. Like, I just was so into it because it was just such a great community to be a part of. I really liked sharing story ideas. I liked that I had beta readers. Like, I actually had beta readers back then. Do you know how long it was between writing fanfiction and doing my own work? It took me to find a beta reader. It's really not as easy as it sounds. A lot of people don't really want to just read your original work for free just to point out issues with it, but they will absolutely read your fanfiction when it's a favorite pairing of theirs or a favorite character of theirs or an interesting idea, just because they want to see what happens because they trust you as a fanfiction author. So that's kind of cool. I like that. And at this point, you can't even argue that it's not a successful venture. E.L. James got her start by writing a Twilight fanfiction called Masters of the Universe, which we now know as 50 Shades of Grey. Huge hit. Made a lot of money. Pretty sure it still does. And then you have Cassandra Clare, who started out in Harry Potter fan fiction. Even back then, she had a huge following. like just masses and masses of people who wanted to read their work. And it translates into the work she does now with the Mortal Instruments. People love it. It's been made into a movie. It's been made into a TV series. Fans can't get enough of Mortal Instruments. Cassandra Clare definitely learned a lot of her craft in writing fan fiction, and it shows in her work. Well, I guess at the end of the day, if you're really asking if fan fiction is worthwhile, I don't think it's even a question. Of course it's worthwhile. The community is worth being a part of. Being creative is worth being a part of. As long as you're not selling it for profit, which you can't do here in the United States. You can in Japan, but it's a little different, kind of different laws and rules there. But as long as you're not making a profit off of it, who cares? Like, it's fun. It's just something to do. It's something to explore. It's something to share with people who are passionate about the same thing you're passionate about. You can make friends that way. I can't admit that I'm in contact with many of the friends I made back then, but I made friends back then. And it was nice, like, especially as an outcast in high school, to have people I could talk to about something that I loved on a regular basis. I don't think I've ever been a part of such big communities where I could just easily, as soon as I got bored with something, I could just go right to the next one. I could make a bunch more friends. It was fantastic to be a part of. Like, it shaped a lot of my writing. I actually learned how to grow very thick skin by writing fan fiction, because I would get comments anywhere from, "This story sucks," to, "You should kill yourself. This is atrocious. I can't believe you wrote anything as awful as this." I was 13 years old when I got that. I was 13 years old and I was told to kill myself over a fanfic by someone on the internet. Kind of hits your ego a little hard. But I didn't, obviously. And I did learn eventually to just take every single comment with a grain of salt. And I learned to take all the criticisms with a grain of salt. At the end of the day, the only ones that matter are the ones who enjoy it, because they're the ones who come back. They're the ones who want more. And you want to focus on those things that they love. It's a great skill to learn, and the fanfiction community is a fantastic way to do it. I will always argue that fanfiction is worthwhile. It is absolutely worthwhile. It's worth the community, it's worth the friends, and it's worth the skills you can build as a writer. There is nothing about writing fanfiction that I look back on and think I'm ashamed of myself for doing it. Did I write awful things? Yes. Did I write really badly written things? Absolutely. Did I completely muck up a bunch of characters? You bet I did. But it was all part of the learning process. I still learned. I learned how to create interesting characters. I learned how to explore different facets of personality to make them more realistic. I learned how to world build, because I was taking characters I liked, but then putting them somewhere completely different. And I had to build on that to make it feel right. I learned a ton by writing fan fiction. And as long as you're willing to learn, then of course it's worthwhile. And even if you don't want to learn, if you just want to do it for fun, it's worthwhile. It's fun to do. It's fun to explore those things. It's fun to take Klaus and Caroline in Vampire Diaries and put them in a totally different universe where she's pregnant and he's the father. Like, a lot of people would love for that to happen in the show. So of course it's a super popular type of fan fiction. They want them to be together forever, and everybody knows babies do that. Right? Right, guys? Right? But all joking aside, yes, fanfiction is completely worthwhile. It is worth doing. It is worth writing. It is worth reading. If you want to do it, go for it. If you want to read it, go for it. If you don't want any part of it, stay out of it. We won't miss you. Bye-bye.